The city hummed outside my 26th floor apartment window, a symphony of ambition and relentless pursuit. From up here, New York looked like a glittering promise, a place where hard work truly paid off. And it had, for me. I was Jane, a marketing executive, navigating the cutthroat world of Madison Avenue, pulling in a salary that, frankly, my parents couldn't even fathom back in our quiet suburban hometown. My life was a meticulously crafted machine of early mornings, late nights, and the exhilarating rush of landing a big campaign. I was building something, brick by painful brick, for myself. But even from this height, the shadow of my past, of my family, stretched long and cold. It wasn't the kind of shadow that falls from a loving embrace. It was the kind that suffocates. It was the shadow of Sarah, my older sister. Sarah, a perpetually 30-year-old aspiring artist, read unemployed, with a penchant for expensive hobbies and zero discernible talent, was the family's crown jewel, at least in our parents' eyes. She floated through life with a serene detachment, a perpetual victim of circumstance, while I clawed my way up the corporate ladder. And despite Sarah's idleness, despite her complete lack of contribution to society, or even to our household growing up, she remained the favored one, the golden child, the fragile blossom who needed constant nurturing, constant protection. And that protection, increasingly, came in the form of my hard-earned money. It started subtly enough after I landed my first real job right out of college. A phone call from Mom, her voice laced with that familiar blend of sweetness and thinly veiled guilt. "Oh, Janie dear, your father's car needs new tires and you know how tight things are. Just a little something, honey, if you can spare it." I sent it, of course. I loved my parents. I wanted to help. Then came the unexpected utility bill, the urgent roof repair, the special supplement for Dad's back. Each request was cloaked in parental need, delivered with tearful sighs and vague promises of repayment that never materialized. And each time a small part of me knew the truth, a truth that burned with a quiet resentment. This money wasn't just for them, it was to subsidize Sarah's lifestyle. She didn't work. Not really. She'd dabble in painting for a month, then find herself through expensive yoga retreats, then decide she was meant to be a pastry chef and buy top-of-the-line kitchen gadgets that gathered dust. All while living rent-free in a wing of our parents' house, ordering takeout and never once offering to contribute to a single bill. The calls became more frequent, the requested sums grew larger. From a few $100s, it escalated to thousands. Sarah needs a new laptop for her graphic design studies. Sarah's car broke down and she needs something reliable for her art commissions. Sarah's feeling very stressed, she needs a little getaway to clear her head. The lies became increasingly transparent, yet my parents swallowed them whole, regurgitating them to me with unwavering conviction. I was trapped in a financial and emotional vice. On one hand, the ingrained loyalty to my parents, the guilt they so skillfully wielded. On the other, the seething frustration that my ambition, my sacrifices, my life were being bled dry to prop up a parasitic existence. I, the diligent 26-year-old marketing executive, found myself increasingly resentful of their blatant favoritism. The very money I earned through countless sleepless nights and soul-crushing presentations was disappearing into a black hole named Sarah. I tried to talk to them, subtly at first. "Mom, maybe Sarah could look for a part-time job, even just something small to help out?" The response was immediate, chilling. "Oh, Janie, you don't understand. Sarah is sensitive. The world is so hard on her. She needs her space, her creativity. You're so strong, honey. You can handle anything. That's why we rely on you." The message was clear. My strength was a burden, a reason to exploit me, while Sarah's weakness was a virtue. The last straw came 2 weeks ago. My parents called, their voices thick with worry, begging for a loan of $10,000. "It's an urgent medical bill," Mom whispered, almost tearfully. "Something came up with Sarah. She's been so quiet, so tired. Please, Janie, she needs this." My bank account, carefully cultivated for a down payment on my own apartment, suddenly looked meager. I felt a cold dread. $10,000 for an urgent medical bill for someone who looked perfectly healthy? That night, alone in my apartment, staring at the glittering, indifferent skyline of New York, a fire ignited within me. I was tired of the lies, tired of the favoritism, tired of her perpetual dependence and my parents' emotional manipulation. This wasn't love anymore. This was exploitation. This was an injustice that corroded my very soul. I was providing them with a comfortable retirement, all while funding my sister's prolonged adolescence. I decided it was time for a frank discussion, not a subtle hint, not a timid question, a full, unvarnished, brutal conversation. I needed to draw a line in the sand to reclaim my life, my money, and my sanity. I booked a train ticket home for the upcoming weekend. The drive from the station to their house felt longer than usual. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel. I practiced my opening lines in my head. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about finances. I can't keep doing this. Sarah needs to find a job." Each phrase felt inadequate, too gentle for the storm I knew was coming. As I pulled into the driveway, an unsettling stillness hung in the air. The curtains were drawn, no lights visible, a knot tightened in my stomach. Maybe they weren't home? I grabbed my bag and walked up to the front door, the familiar path now feeling alien. I inserted my key, a relic from a life I'd thought I'd left behind, and pushed the door open. The immediate sound that greeted me was muffled but unmistakable. Weeping, deep, heart-wrenching sobs coming from the living room. My parents. I rushed in, my carefully constructed battle plan dissolving into instant panic. They sat on the sofa huddled together, Mom's face buried in Dad's shoulder, both of them shaking with uncontrolled grief. Sarah sat beside them, a blanket draped over her, looking frail and pale, her eyes red-rimmed and distant. "Mom? Dad? What's wrong? What happened?" My voice was barely a whisper, dread coiling in my gut. Mom looked up, her eyes swollen and bloodshot. "Oh, Janie," she choked out, her voice raspy with tears. "It's Sarah. Our poor Sarah." My gaze snapped to my sister. Sarah looked thinner than usual, certainly. A bit more fragile, but not like this. Not like the weeping of parents mourning a lost child. Dad took a shaky breath, struggling to speak. "The doctors, they confirmed it. It's so rare and so aggressive." My blood ran cold. The unspoken words hung in the air. Terminal illness. Mom managed to push out, They said it's incurable, unless we can get her into that experimental program in Switzerland, but it's so expensive. So expensive." Then Sarah, my sister, who had been silent, turned her pale face towards me. Her voice, thin and reedy, was barely audible. "They said it's like a ticking clock, Jane. $300,000, just to have a chance." My mind reeled. $300,000. That was the figure my parents had been hinting at. The urgent medical bill for $10,000 had clearly been a down payment. My entire savings, my future apartment, my security, all of it wouldn't even be a fraction of that sum. I looked at Sarah, truly looked at her. Her face was gaunt, yes, and her eyes were indeed shadowed. But a terminal illness? One that required a $300,000 experimental treatment in Switzerland? Something felt profoundly wrong. My logical mind, honed by years of scrutinizing data and spotting inconsistencies in marketing campaigns, screamed. She didn't look like someone facing imminent death. She looked like someone who had just lost a lot of weight, perhaps from stress, perhaps from something else. "What exactly is it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "What's the diagnosis?" My parents exchanged a glance, then Mom wrung her hands. It's a very complicated blood disorder, Janie. Very rare. The doctors explained it, but it was all so technical. Something about the cells mutating." "Do you have the medical reports?" I pressed, my suspicion solidifying into a hard knot in my stomach. "The diagnosis? The treatment plan from this Swiss clinic?" Sarah fidgeted under my gaze. I have a note from the doctor," she whispered, her voice meek. She reached for a crumpled piece of paper on the coffee table and handed it to me. I took the paper. It was a single sheet, hastily printed, with a generic clinic letterhead. The diagnosis was vague, mentioning a rare hematological condition. The treatment recommendation was even more so, simply stating, experimental gene therapy, estimated cost $300,000, referral to European facility. No specific doctor's name, no detailed lab results, no proper medical jargon beyond the basics. It was a flimsy, unprofessional document, a doctor's note that looked like it had been typed up by an amateur. My heart ached with betrayal, but it was quickly overshadowed by a cold, righteous anger. This wasn't a doctor's note. This was a crude attempt at manipulation. My parents, blinded by their desperate love and ingrained favoritism, were being taken for a ride. And I, as usual, was expected to pay for it. The gay tension in the room thickened. My mind, usually so sharp and analytical, felt like a hurricane. Terminal illness, $300,000, a flimsy note. My sister, the eternal dependent, looking just a little too frail, a little too innocent. A voice inside me, strong and resolute, whispered, "No, not this time." My gaze hardened. I looked at Sarah, then at my parents, their faces etched with what I now suspected was manufactured grief. My skepticism hardened into outright conviction. My inner marketing executive, the one who saw through false claims and deceptive advertising, took over. I knew, with chilling certainty, that I was looking at a carefully constructed lie, and I was going to unearth every rotten root of it. "I'm going to need more than this," I said, my voice cutting through their sniffles. "I'm going to need detailed medical records, the name of the hospital where she was diagnosed, the full report from this Swiss clinic." My parents looked startled. Sarah's eyes darted away. The fragile illusion in the room, built on tears and vague diagnoses, began to crack. I knew then what I had to do. I wasn't just here for a frank discussion about finances. I was here to uncover the truth, and I had a gut feeling that this truth would be far more devastating than anything I could have imagined. The hunt for answers had just begun. The flimsy note, Sarah's medical report, felt like a cheap prop in my hand. My parents' tear-streaked faces, Sarah's exaggerated fragility. It was all a performance, and I was being asked to pay for the front row seats. My gut, usually a reliable compass in the unpredictable currents of New York's marketing world, screamed fraud. The initial shock had receded, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. I was no longer just Jane, the dutiful daughter. I was Jane, the investigator. I didn't waste a second. The next morning, armed with that crumpled note, I walked into the imposing glass and steel lobby of the hospital, whose name was vaguely listed on Sarah's bogus document. It was a renowned medical center, the kind where real miracles happened, not where flimsy excuses were printed. I approached the information desk, the efficiency of the place a stark contrast to the chaotic emotional landscape I'd just left. "Hi," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm looking for patient information for a Sarah Miller. She was supposedly diagnosed here recently with a rare hematological condition." The receptionist, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, typed away for a moment. Her brow furrowed. "Miller? Sarah? Spell that for me, please." I did. She typed some more. "Date of birth?" I gave it. More typing. Then a slow shake of her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no record of a Sarah Miller being diagnosed with any such condition here. In fact, we have no patient by that name matching that birth date recently." My heart hammered, a mix of vindication and a sickening dread. It was worse than I thought. "Are you sure?" I pressed, handing her the note. "This came from here. It has your hospital's name on it." She took the paper, her eyes scanning it. Her expression shifted from polite inquiry to something sharper, more professional. She turned the note over, examining the letterhead. "This is an imitation," she said, her voice dropping. "The font is slightly off, and our official letterhead includes our full accreditation number, which this is missing. And this address..." She pointed to a small, almost unnoticeable line at the bottom. "This isn't one of our facilities. This is an old, abandoned clinic address downtown, marked for demolition years ago. It's been used by unsavory operations before." A cold wave washed over me. An abandoned clinic, unsavory operations. My sister wasn't sick. She was a con artist, and my parents were her unwitting victims. The receptionist, sensing the gravity of the situation, immediately called for a supervisor. Within minutes, a stern-faced woman in scrubs, clearly in charge, was looking at the fake note with grim determination. "This is a serious matter," she informed me. "Attempting to defraud a hospital or use its name to solicit funds for fictitious treatments is a federal offense. We will be launching an immediate investigation into this clinic and anyone associated with this document." She took the note, now evidence, and assured me they would pursue it. I walked out of that hospital feeling a strange mix of nauseous anger and renewed purpose. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, forming a picture far uglier than I had imagined. Sarah wasn't just lazy or spoiled, she was manipulative, deceptive, and potentially criminal, and my parents, in their blind favoritism, were enabling her. My next step was clear. I had to follow Sarah. My marketing job in New York had taught me the art of observation, of dissecting human behavior, of finding the unseen patterns in data. Now, I would apply those skills to my own sister. I spent the next few days in a carefully orchestrated surveillance mission. I called in sick, claiming a highly contagious flu, a lie that felt ironic given the sickness festering in my own family. I rented a nondescript car, switched to a burner phone, and armed myself with a thermos of coffee and a determination colder than the November air. I positioned myself strategically near my parents' house, observing Sarah's daily routine. She mostly stayed in, as expected, but what I noticed was a pattern of late afternoon departures. She wasn't going to a doctor. She wasn't visiting friends. She was getting dressed up almost meticulously for someone or something. My heart pounded the first time I followed her. She drove her beat-up sedan, the one I'd paid to fix for her art commissions, out of the driveway and headed not towards any known family friend or shopping mall, but into a part of town I didn't recognize. An upscale residential area I'd only ever seen in magazines. She parked a few blocks away from a gleaming modern building, all glass balconies and polished chrome. A high-end apartment complex. My suspicions ratcheted up another notch. This wasn't the kind of place Sarah could afford, not without a job. I watched her walk towards the building, her shoulders back, a spring in her step I hadn't seen in years. She looked invigorated, not frail, not dying. She looked like a woman with a secret, a thrilling secret. I waited and waited. Hours passed. My legs cramped, my eyes burned. The sun began to set, painting the city skyline in hues of orange and purple. Finally, just after dusk, she emerged. Not alone. A man was with her. Tall, impeccably dressed, with slicked-back hair and a practiced, charming smile. He held her arm, almost possessively. They laughed, a carefree, intimate sound that grated on my ears. They looked like a couple in love, or perhaps a couple caught up in a passionate, illicit affair. I followed them to a trendy, expensive-looking restaurant. I slipped inside, taking a table far from them, partially obscured by a large potted plant. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. I watched as they ordered vintage wine and dishes I knew cost more than my weekly grocery bill. Sarah, who always claimed to be too sensitive for harsh lighting or loud noises, seemed perfectly at home, bathed in the soft glow of the restaurant, her face animated as she spoke to him. This wasn't a sick woman. This was a woman living a lavish, secret life. The next few days were a blur of surveillance. Every afternoon, Sarah would primp, then drive to the same high-end apartment building, and every evening she would emerge, usually with the same man. Sometimes they went out, sometimes they just disappeared back into the building. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. Who was this man? And how was Sarah funding this opulent double life? My suspicion, which had been a gnawing ache, turned into a burning certainty. This wasn't about a boyfriend. This wasn't just about a secret relationship. This was about money. My money. One afternoon, I got lucky. Sarah left her apartment building alone, heading to a quick appointment, giving me a small window of opportunity. I moved fast, walking straight up to the main entrance of the high-end building. I feigned confusion, gesturing to a fictitious apartment number. "Excuse me," I said to the doorman, a burly man with kind eyes. "I think I'm in the wrong place. I'm looking for Unit 12B, but my friend never mentioned the name on the lease." The doorman, bless his unsuspecting heart, typed something into his computer. 12B? That would be Mr. Leo Vance. He's usually quite discreet, ma'am. Perhaps your friend has another unit here? Leo Vance. So that was his name? My mind clicked. Leo Vance. I made a show of checking my phone. "Ah, yes, Leo. My friend just said the unit number. Is he usually here in the afternoons?" I tried to sound casual. The doorman chuckled. "Mr. Vance is a man of leisure, ma'am, or at least he seems to be. He's here most days. Always has different lady friends visiting, if you know what I mean." He gave me a knowing wink. "Very popular guy. Different lady friends." My blood ran cold. Popular guy. The pieces slammed together with a sickening thud. Sarah, the perpetual dependent, with her endless, urgent needs and her phantom illnesses. The sudden $300,000 request. The vague, fraudulent doctor's note. The high-end apartment. The man of leisure with different lady friends. The horrifying truth, so utterly outlandish yet so undeniably clear, hit me with the force of a wrecking ball. My sister wasn't sick. She wasn't a struggling artist. She wasn't even having a conventional affair. She was supporting a male escort, a gigolo, and my parents' money, my money, was literally paying for it. The $300,000 wasn't for a life-saving treatment. It was for Leo Vance's next business venture, or perhaps his rent, or maybe just his next luxury car. The sheer audacity, the blatant, callous deception left me breathless. My vision blurred for a moment, the glittering city outside my metaphorical window suddenly appearing as a harsh, ugly, concrete jungle. My sister, the sensitive one, the fragile one, had spun a web of lies so intricate, so cruel, that it had ensnared our parents and drained me dry. I thanked the doorman, my voice feeling strangely detached. I walked out of that building into the cool afternoon air, my hands clenching into fists. The anger, cold and precise before, now flared into a white-hot inferno. I had never felt such rage, such profound betrayal, not from Richard, not from any demanding client, but from my own flesh and blood. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about a complete shredding of trust, a desecration of family bonds. My sister had exploited our parents' love and my dutiful nature to fuel a lifestyle of pure, unadulterated hedonism, and the terminal illness was merely the ultimate, most depraved weapon in her arsenal of manipulation. I pulled out my burner phone, my fingers flying across the keypad. I had a phone call to make, not to my parents yet. Not until I had every single piece of undeniable evidence. I knew who I needed to call first, the hospital supervisor, the one who had promised an investigation into the fraudulent clinic. I needed their report. I needed it now. Then I would gather every bank statement, every canceled check, every single proof of the money I had poured into this black hole. I would present it all to my parents, a mountain of undeniable truth. The confrontation would be brutal. It would shatter the comfortable illusions my parents had built around Sarah. It would break their hearts. But it had to be done. The truth, however painful, had to come out. And then, the real reckoning would begin. Sarah had played a dangerous game, using love and pity as her pawns. Now it was time for her to face the queen, and the queen in this game was me. The evidence I had gathered was a physical weight in my hands, a stack of damning printouts, bank statements, and the official hospital letter confirming the fraud. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and grim determination. This was it. The moment I would shatter my parents' carefully constructed illusions about Sarah and about themselves. I arrived at their house, not with the pretense of a visit, but with the resolve of a prosecutor They were in the living room, still in the hushed, grief-stricken tableau I'd found them in, still consumed by Sarah's illness. "Mom, Dad, Sarah," I began, my voice firm, allowing no room for interruption. "We need to talk, all of us, and this time, there will be no more lies." Their eyes widened. Sarah stiffened, a flicker of fear crossing her pale face. My parents looked bewildered, then annoyed. "Jane, what is this? Your sister is sick. This is not the time for your accusations," my mother cried, her voice still hoarse from weeping. I laid the first piece of evidence on the coffee table, the letter from the hospital. "This is from New York Presbyterian. They confirmed that Sarah has never been a patient there for any rare hematological condition. And the address on her doctor's note belongs to a defunct clinic, now under investigation for fraud. They're involved now, Mom. Dad, this isn't a game." My parents stared at the letter, their expressions a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Sarah's face drained of all color. "What are you talking about, Jane?" "What investigation?" my father stammered, his brow furrowed. I pulled out the next stack, my bank statements. "For years I've been sending you money, thousands, tens of thousands, for your expenses, for emergencies. But I traced it, every single penny. It didn't go to your bills. It went to Sarah, and then it went from Sarah's account to Leo Vance." I watched their faces as I said the name. Sarah visibly flinched. "Who is Leo Vance?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "He's not a doctor. He's not a business partner. He's a male escort, Mom. A gigolo. Your precious Sarah has been spending every dime I sent, every dime she could get her hands on, to fund his lavish lifestyle and his business ventures." I paused, letting that sink in. The $300,000 treatment for her terminal illness? That was for him, for his investment opportunity. He just blew it on a new luxury car and gambling debts. My parents' eyes were wide, darting from me to Sarah, who had shrunk back into the sofa cushions, her earlier fragility replaced by a terrified, cornered look. "No, that's not true. Jane, you're lying," Sarah shrieked, her voice cracking. "She's always been jealous, Mom. Dad, don't listen to her." Initially, my parents, blinded by their ingrained favoritism, were hesitant to believe me. They wanted to believe Sarah. They needed to believe her. "Sarah, tell her it's not true," my mother pleaded, reaching for my sister's hand. But then I pulled out the last, most devastating piece of evidence. "And this," I said, my voice barely a whisper but loaded with unbearable weight, "is what sealed it for me. I managed to get access to your bank records, Mom, Dad, just yesterday, because I had a feeling, and that feeling was right. I spread out printouts of their own savings account. Sarah didn't just take my money. She took yours, every cent of your retirement savings. For Leo Vance, it's all gone, emptied out less than a month ago." The color drained from my parents' faces. Their eyes, already swollen from manufactured grief, now widened with true horror. They stared at the printouts, then at each other, then at Sarah. The numbers didn't lie. The dates were undeniable. Their life savings gone. Sarah, seeing her game was up, burst into desperate, genuine sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He told me it was an investment. He promised it would pay us back tenfold. He said he loved me." Their denial crumbled. My mother let out a guttural cry, a sound of profound, unadulterated heartbreak. My father, usually so stoic, buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. They hadn't just lost money, they had lost their retirement, their security, and the idealized image of their beloved daughter. Enraged and heartbroken, they banished Sarah from their home until she could support herself. My father stood up, his voice trembling with a fury I had never witnessed. "Get out, Sarah," he commanded, pointing to the door. "Get out of my house. You will not return until you can look us in the eye and say you can stand on your own 2 feet, earned with your own honest work. You will not feed off us, or your sister, ever again." My mother, still weeping, echoed his sentiment. We can't look at you right now. You used our love. You used Jane's generosity. Go." Sarah, shocked by their unexpected resolve, scrambled to gather a few belongings, her sobs turning into whimpers of desperate pleading. "Please, Mom! Dad! I have nowhere to go! He'll leave me!" "Then that's your problem, isn't it?" I said, my voice cold, "just as our financial support was your problem until today." She cast one last desperate, hateful look at me, as if this was all my fault, before fleeing out the door. The sound of her car speeding away left a vacuum in the living room, a hollow silence filled only by my parents' quiet weeping. The aftermath was painful, a long, arduous process of rebuilding shattered trust. My parents were devastated, not just by the financial loss, but by the emotional betrayal. They struggled to come to terms with the reality of Sarah's deceit and their own complicity in enabling her. For weeks, the house was shrouded in a heavy, grief-stricken quiet. During this time, I stayed with them, helping them navigate their new financial reality. Their life savings were gone, but their house was paid off, and they had a small pension. I sat them down, not as their daughter, but as their financial advisor. I decided to maintain a consistent, fixed monthly allowance for my parents' genuine needs, covering their utilities, groceries, and medical copays, but I ceased all additional payments. No more emergency funds, no more unexpected bills. They had to learn to live within their means, and I had to learn to protect my own. It was tough love, but it was necessary for all of us. They resisted at first, still trying to slip in requests for Sarah, for just a little something to help her get started, but I stood firm, calmly reminding them of the truth. Slowly, painfully, they began to accept it. They started managing their budget, making their own choices, and for the first time in years, they seemed to regain a sense of agency, however small. They also began to see me, truly see me, not just as the strong one to be leaned on, but as the daughter who had bravely uncovered a painful truth to protect them. Our relationship, though scarred, began a slow, tentative process of healing, built on a foundation of honesty rather than obligation. As for Sarah, her desperate plea to my parents had been prophetic. She moved in with Leo, clinging to the illusion of his affection, or at least his financial utility. But as I had suspected, their arrangement quickly dissolved. Leo, a man driven purely by self-interest, didn't stick around when the money dried up. Within a month, without a steady stream of funds from Sarah, they couldn't afford the rent on the high-end apartment. They were evicted. Leo, true to his nature, abandoned her for a new benefactor, a new source of easy money. Sarah was left alone, adrift, without a home, without a plan, and with no one to turn to. She desperately sought help from her family, but finding none, was forced to confront reality and seek employment. Her calls to my parents were met with a firm, albeit pained, refusal. "You need to learn to stand on your own," my father would say, his voice weary but resolute. When she called me, I simply repeated the truth. "You made your choices, Sarah. Now you have to live with them. I love you, but I cannot enable you anymore." It was a harsh, agonizing awakening for her. The world, which she had always believed owed her a living, suddenly demanded that she contribute. I heard through the grapevine that she eventually found a job waiting tables, then working retail. It was a brutal adjustment for someone who had never truly worked a day in her life. But it was a start, a difficult but necessary path to genuine growth. My story isn't just about a sister's betrayal or parents' misguided love. It's about the fundamental truth that true independence and respect are earned through responsibility and honesty, not through manipulative schemes or relying on others' generosity. It's a testament to the idea that deception, especially against those who love you, ultimately leads to isolation and self-reliance. Sometimes the most painful truths are the ones that finally set us free, allowing us to build lives rooted in integrity and authentic connection. I learned that day that protecting those you love sometimes means allowing them to face the consequences of their own choices, no matter how difficult that may be. My strength, once a burden, became my greatest asset, allowing me to draw boundaries and build a future rooted in my own hard work and principles. And so, the journey of Jane, the diligent executive who chose truth over family illusion, concludes. Her story reminds us that while love can blind, honesty eventually sets us free, sometimes through the most painful lessons. If Jane's unwavering strength and the powerful message of her journey resonated with you, if it sparked a thought about personal responsibility or the difficult truths within families, please consider liking this story, subscribing for more narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and personal growth, and commenting below with your thoughts and reflections. Your insights are incredibly valuable, and I truly appreciate you joining me on this profound journey. Thank you for reading, and I hope to connect with you again soon.